My name is Lance Collins. For this presentation, for our multimedia presentation, I'm doing this on a local museum, the Greer Heritage Museum. The executive director of the museum is David Lovegrove, and he was generous enough to give me a guided tour of the museum. I got over an hour of video for this and really had to cut a lot out, unfortunately, of that video. And I'm going to just start with some parts of the tour that he gave me, and so I hope you enjoy this.
The reason I put it here to reflect what we're talking about is in early Greer, if you had come around in 1876 in the community, you would have seen two things. You would have seen little log cabins, little 1, 2, 3 room dirt floor, the barest of living conditions. And you would have seen farmhouses nice like this. And it's part of that same story of farmers who are subsistence farmers with nothing, who shift to cotton and they have wealth. And so the community in early Greer, most of the early houses being built are these. And we have records in several cases of where these are being built beside the log cabin, and when the house is finished, they move out of the log cabin into the house and tear down the log cabin. So it really reflects that. The next room also, I've designed trying to tell a little bit of that story. You know, that farmer with very little money is coming home and he's hanging his hat on a hook like this. And 5 years later, that farmer has switched to cotton and he's coming home and hanging his hat on a hook like this. And so I've tried to divide this room into, on this side, what was life like for those farmers, the door of the house that actually came off of one of these cabins of one of these farmers. What was life like for those farmers? And then what was it like at the exact same time period as those people got a little more money, a little more resource. I'll mention, I'm building this out. I've got a lot more work to do in this room, but I'm building this out with parallels, like the hat hook, where on this side of the room, a picture was an extremely rare and expensive item. And so this family has a tintype on the wall. This family has a very large hand-colored, nicely framed picture. Here's a bank calendar on the wall, and there's a bank calendar on the wall. So I'm getting these parallels, and there's a lot more to do on that. But one that I'm working on, there is a family that lives up in the dark corner who have their grandfather's banjo, which he handmade out of an oil can. So an oil can banjo, and I very much want to get it on the wall over here opposite the organ. Same story, musicians are gonna find ways to make music, but when you have no money, you're making it yourself. Yeah. And then this conversion economically was remarkable, so yeah. I shift the focus in the museum to textiles here, and so we have some simple examples. I call this the circle of life because I've got a christening gown and a wedding dress and a funeral dress. All three handmade in the 1800s. This dress worn by 7 generations, and we have pictures of all 7, which is just, I'm so excited. I've got to get the panels up to show the story. But textiles, I did not really appreciate until I started studying this in the community, what it took for a family to have clothes. And there was an oral interview where a lady said this quote. I put it on the wall because it really changed how I saw life here. She said, "We carded in fall, spun in the winter, wove in the spring, and sewed in the summer." And what she's talking about here is they're growing cotton throughout the summer. And in the fall, the cotton is getting harvested. You can't make clothes out of cotton balls, right? So the first step is you have to get the cotton where all of the fibers are aligned the same direction. And you do that with a process called carding, where you have these two like brushes. If you've ever seen a cat brush that's really fine metal wires, You take two of those and you put the cotton balls in between them and you pull them against each other like this. And it just pulls all of the fibers in the same direction. And so after you card the cotton, you can then get it on a spinning wheel and spin it into thread. And when you have thread, you can weave it on a loom like this into fabric. And when you have fabric, you can sew it into clothes. And so I just never really realized before, to sew clothes, you have to have fabric, and to have fabric, you have to have thread, and to have thread, you have to card it, and to card it, you have to grow it. And that's a year-long process. So they're doing this all year long to get their clothes. As cotton wouldn't grow in the upcountry, some farmers shifted to peaches, but many of these wealthy men were shifting from farming to starting companies. They were starting businesses on Trade Street. And some of those said, instead of growing cotton, we are going to start textile mills that weave cotton. We're gonna buy cotton from the low country and build a mill that weaves it into fabric. And so Greer's first weaving mill opened in 1897, and we ended up with 5 mills in the immediate community. And they took over the economy of the town itself, not the agriculture around it, but in town. About 80% of our residents in town worked in the mills. In the early years, at the beginning, that was a huge number of children working in the mills. 1 in 4 children on average in the upcountry worked in the mills in 1900, and that was pretty accurate here. Our one mill that still remains, Greer Mill, has inside it, there's a lift, a big machine elevator, and it has a sign over the lift that still has hand painted on it. This elevator may not be operated by anyone under the age of 10. So they had limits on where they would go. The first rule against child labor in South Carolina came in 1903, and then that raised the limit to 10, and then they gradually raised the age. In Greer, our mills developed villages where they built homes for their people. This little rack of key tags are the Victor Mill Village house tags from their keys. If you worked in the mill, you got a house. Greer Mill tried an experiment. They called it the family labor system, where you would get a house with a bedroom for every family member that would work in the mill. So if only dad worked in the mill, you got a 1-bedroom house. If dad and mom worked in the mill, you got a 2-bedroom house. If dad and mom and 3 kids worked in the mill, you got a 5-bedroom house. So that didn't work very well, and they ended up going, like all the other mill villages, back to just little tiny homes. But the mill villages were really completely insulated from outside life. They had their own churches, their own schools, their own stores, and it was very much a community all of its own.
I asked Mr. Lovegrove the work they're doing to help keep history alive for the public and to preserve the history of Greer's past, and here's what he said.
I have decided to shift my life work to focus on preserving and telling the stories of history. It's important to me for a variety of reasons. First of all, I am a Christian, and the history is the story of God's work in the world. And that story is told through how he works in the lives of real people in real situations. And the story, this community that this is a local history museum. It's not my family community. I have no roots here. I have no family come from here. But it doesn't matter where on earth. You look at how God worked in people in the world, and that work is critical and important. The lives of these people were important to him and are important to tell and to share. And we can learn from them. So this is a little town here that is very young, the town being founded in 1876. And what that means is there hasn't been a lot of work done yet to collect and preserve the town's history. there are still alive grandchildren of the founders living in their grandparents' houses, and in their attics are still their grandparents' original records and documents and things. And so to me, it is this brief moment where the history of the founding of the town and of these early people can still be gathered and collected and researched. And if you wait 10 years, it probably won't be. Those people are dying. Those houses are getting sold. Those attics are getting thrown in dumpsters. And so it's a really critical moment for this community to capture, collect, protect the history while it still can be protected. So that's a lot of the work I'm doing, collecting the history, doing conservation and preservation work to make sure it will last long after I'm here, and then figuring out how to tell that story and share it with people in the community.